You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap, our continued coverage of all of this past weekend's action. Friday, Madison Square Garden, on the undercard of Taylor versus Serrano 3, we saw Sherikica Johnson mow down then IBF champion Sharita Metcalf to become the inaugural, undisputed bantamweight champion. There's never been one before her, let alone in the four-belt era. Sherikica Johnson was the first. New Zealand's first, Australia's first, and the very first that the division has ever seen. The fight. My prediction video, I said that Sherikica Johnson would do to Sharita Metcalf what she just did to Nina Hughes in their last two fights. She's going to barrel forward, put pressure on her, crowd her, and back her off. Sharita Metcalf, being a long-distance fighter, she's not comfortable fighting mid-range to inside, so Sherikica crowding her, that's going to be a problem. That's what we saw. Sherikica Johnson coming in at a slight crouch, doubling and tripling up on the jab, snapping Sharita Metcalf's head back, pushing her around, bullying her, and knocking her off balance as Sharita Metcalf on those 40-year-old legs tried her best to hang tough and hang on, looking more and more like an umbrella caught in a monsoon. This is what I thought would happen. This is what I figured. You'd think that Sherikica Johnson were a pressure fighter based on her last 2 or 3 outings, but she's actually a lot more adaptable than that. When I first saw Sherikica, she was more of a boxer, more of a mover, a finesse fighter. But apparently with Sherikica Johnson, you get the best of both worlds. You get a boxer and a brawler, as she can box and brawl whenever the situation calls for it. After approximately 9 rounds of ragdolling, then IBF champion Sharita Metcalf, the contest finally came to a halt as Sherikica Johnson forced a TKO stoppage. So many moments in this fight, I thought that the towel would come out from Sharita Metcalf's corner because she's getting beat up. She's getting brutalized. And this is what you have to do with an older fighter like a Sharita Metcalf. You can't make it a chess match. Those old-timers, they can play chess all day. You have to make it physical. You have to make it rough and tumble, show their age. And that's what Sherikica Johnson did. There's not a lot of subtleties to it. There don't need to be. Not always. Sometimes a straightforward approach is what you need. Sometimes you need some nuance. In the case of Ali Scotney and Jamie Mercado, that's what happened. North of Bantam at Super Bantam for what were 3 of the 4 major titles at that weight, Ellie Scotney's subtleties and Ellie Scotney's nuances made a world of difference against a physically durable fighter, experienced more than Ellie, though not more talented. Ellie Scotney made the longest reigning champion in the Super Bantamweight division look like a rank amateur for 10 rounds. Jamie's reign as WBC champion went on uninterrupted for about 6 years. Champion as of November of 2019. The reign that Ellie Scotney brought to an end this past weekend with her subtleties, her nuances, her X's and O's. The very first punch landed in the fight was a tight jab from Ellie Scotney that came in so quick it was almost impossible for Jamie to counter. Jamie, who was noticeably slower than Ellie Scotney, punched a lot wider, creating big holes, big gaps for Ellie to put punches in there. She's got slower hands than Ellie Scotney, slower feet, so it was very difficult for Jamie to put the pressure on her. Very easy for Ellie Scotney to see the punches coming and respond in kind. You talk about being a good student. You talk about the communication between Ellie Scotney and her longtime trainer, Shane McGuigan, hearing the corner instruction and seeing that Ellie Scotney was aware, she was listening. Not everybody does that. That's an underrated skill, irrespective of who the trainer is. Ellie Scotney listens, and being a good student, that pays dividends. Getting out there and capitalizing off of Jamie Mercado's wide sweeping hooks, missing punches by a country mile, leaving big openings for Ellie Scotney to put punches in there. Now, just one belt away from becoming an undisputed champion like her old adversary, Sherikica Johnson, did on that same show. This is Ellie Scotney's MO. Going in there with more experienced fighters than she is, at least more experienced on paper, and making them all look like rank amateurs. After the fight, when the judges' scorecards were announced and Ellie was announced the victor, she dedicated the win to her late friend Georgia O'Connor, who passed, unfortunately, earlier this year, only 25 years old. Very tragic. Ellie is just one belt away from making history. She needs now only to take on Mayeli Flores, rather, the winner of the Flores versus Romero rematch that's supposed to be going down at some point later on this year. That is, unless Jake Paul, Nikisa Badarian, and the people at MVP can convince Nazarena to stand down and convince Mayeli to fight Ellie Scotney instead. And I don't rule that out. Money talks. For now, congratulations to Ellie Scotney for thoroughly outclassing the longest reigning champion at this weight, becoming a unified champion herself. The prediction stuck. I said that Ellie Scotney would win a points decision, and that's exactly what she did. Over to the Louis Armstrong Stadium in Queens, New York, where David Morrell, on the bounce, took on a then unbeaten Imam Khataev in what turned out to be a rough night at the office for the Cuban import. My prediction video, I talked about how I felt that punch for punch, Imam Khataev was the stronger puncher of the two, but David Morrell might bring just enough to the table to win a points decision. That's what he did, at least according to the judges. But not according to some of the spectators, not according to veteran boxing analyst Al Bernstein.
Hi everybody, Al Bernstein here. It is 10:15 Pacific time here on Saturday night, and thus far, as of doing this tape, I've only watched one of the boxing matches on the Ring 3 card tonight. I've watched that fight twice. That is the fight between Imam Khataev and David Morrell. I have reached the only sane conclusion you can reach about that fight, that Khataev won certainly 6 rounds of the fight, and more than likely 7 rounds of the fight. And so when you add in the knockdown he had in round 5, there is no conceivable way on this planet to score the fight for David Morrell. However, the 3 judges, who should be ashamed of themselves for the rest of their lives for the scoring, all got it wrong. The most egregious, of course, was Jan McKay, who had a 96-93 score for David Morrell, which means he gave Morrell 7 of the 10 rounds, which is an impossibility, okay? Alan Nace had a 95-94 from Morrell, giving him 6 rounds, also impossible. And even Tony Lundy, who scored at 95-94 for Khataev, had it all wrong. He gave 5 rounds to Khataev. I rewatched the whole fight, as I pointed out. You have to be either blind or biased to give the fight to David Morrell. Period. End of sentence.
Now, I understand where Al Bernstein is coming from, and how many of you out there may have scored this fight for Imam Khataev, who in spots was the noticeably bigger puncher of the two. The most dramatic moment in the fight is when he scored that knockdown off a huge overhand right. That's the most memorable moment in the fight, and that being the most memorable moment in the fight, it leaves a lasting impression, more than anything David Morrell did. Myself and the panel, we were all scoring the fight live, round by round. And there were a couple of rounds in there, in the second half of the fight, where Imam Khataev actually got off to a decent start, but he sort of let the fight slip away from him, let the rounds slip away from him. And that was more than once. When you talk about stealing rounds, that's when one guy starts the round off okay, but something happens in the middle and towards the end that might make the judges forget what happened at the start. And by my count, David Morrell stole at least 2 or 3 rounds from Imam Khataev in the back end of the fight. fight scheduled for 10 rounds in the light heavyweight division where David Morrell now campaigns, and he hasn't proven to be the puncher at 175 that he once was at 168. Some might disagree with this, but I could see the fight being 6-4 in David Morrell's favor, eking it out by a point. Just a point. You know, because of the knockdown in round 5, that if he won this thing, he didn't win it by much. For me, even the rounds that David might have won, and I say he might have won them because they looked like swing rounds. They really did look like rounds that he stole from the middle and towards the end. Well, how did he steal them? He's periodically getting off clean punches, periodically getting off combinations. I don't really like David Morrell's instincts, if I'm being honest. I felt like he wasn't punching with a sense of urgency or a sense of purpose, but there were a lot of moments towards the tail end of a round where he's doing some halfway decent work that may have been enough to sway the judges, to forget what happened at the beginning of a round and focus on what happened at the end. That happens. A clean David Morrell victory is not a hill that I'm about to die on, but like I said, when we were scoring this thing live, I could see that David piled up enough rounds. He may have piled up enough rounds to eke out a win by the skin of his teeth, though at the same time, an Imam Khataev win would not have surprised me at all. This was a tight fight. 6-4 in either direction would not have surprised me. 6-4 for Khataev or 6-4 for David Morrell. So then why is so many people convinced that Khataev won? His punches seem to have more of an effect on David Morrell than David's punches had on him. So that does affect the perception of the fight, the perception of a round and what's going on in it. David landed a lot of punches on this guy, but Khataev took them well. David never really hurt him, and because he didn't, well, that doesn't leave an impression. Anybody tells me they scored this fight for Khataev, I can understand. But like I said, 6-4 either way. That's how I saw it. 6-4 or 5 rounds to 5, at which point, that is also a Khataev win, due to the additional point from the knockdown in the 5th. And I think that most people probably scored this fight for Khataev. Most. David Morrell's light heavyweight run has been lackluster, to say the least. He looked quite human with Hot Rod in his light heavyweight debut, even more human against David Benavidez, and yesterday, to a lot of people, he should have lost. I picked him to win a decision, and he did, but he didn't impress me. He didn't blow me away. It's really not looking good for him, but the only guys on American soil that the judges like less than the Cubans are the Russians. It's not at all uncommon for Eastern European fighters to get screwed over on American soil, so maybe that's what we saw yesterday? Either way, the prediction stuck. What can I tell you? In the main event, what brought the entire card to a dramatic close, Hamza Sheeraz's 5th round knockout of Edgar Berlanga. And what I think was Hamza Sheeraz's U.S. debut. I don't think he's ever fought here before. X's and O's. The very start of the fight, you notice the height discrepancy between the fighters, the height differential, that Hamza is noticeably taller, noticeably longer than Edgar Berlanga, which I didn't think Edgar was used to. Unless I'm mistaken, the very first punch landed of the fight was a long jab from Hamza Sheeraz, and Edgar was finding it increasingly difficult to stay out of the way of that jab. Even in moments where Edgar lands 1 or 2 short jabs of his own, the jab from Hamza was having more of an effect on Edgar than Edgar's jab was having on him. That resulted in moments where Edgar, the shorter fighter of the two, starts circling away from Hamza Sheeraz, which you really don't want to do against a fighter that is taller than you are, longer than you are. Because they don't need to be close to you to touch you. On the outside, you're the sitting duck. Watching him do that from time to time after getting nailed by the jab, I was just wondering, what is Edgar's strategy? What should it have been? Oh, what he should have done? If you're the shortest, stumpiest, stockiest fighter of the two, the safest place is being close to your opponent. You don't want to give him room to throw if he's got longer arms than you do. You want to stay close to him, you want to smother him, put punches in there and push him back, crowd him. That is the ideal strategy against an opponent that is a lot taller and longer than you are. But even on the inside, even within close quarters, Edgar found out you ain't safe there either. Hamza is better than you on the outside and better than you on the inside. They killed him on the inside with short hooks, short counter hooks within close quarters. It's not often that the taller, longer fighter is better on the inside than the little guy, but that's what we saw. Because Edgar is shit. Because Edgar's a fraud. You can't even say that he got exposed by Hamza Sheeraz because Hamza didn't expose anything that I didn't already know.
I didn't find out yesterday that Edgar sucks. I knew that already. That's why I picked Hamza to win.
2 knockdowns in the 4th round and 1 more in the 5th for the finish. A dramatic end to what was a more entertaining card by and large than the Times Square show headlined by Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero.
This time they got it right. I think that this card was everything that card was intended to be.
I think that was a strong statement from Hamza Sheeraz. Stopping a guy, so easily stopping a guy who managed to go the distance with the king of this division, Canelo Alvarez.
As many celebrate somebody finally shutting up the loudmouth from New York, Edgar Berlanga, the wannabe king.
Papito, I tried to tell you, Papi. I tried to tell you, Papa. I tried to tell you, stop hanging with them rappers and really take this boxing shit serious. I tried to tell you, fam. This is not a cab driver. This is not an Uber driver. Wow, fam. I tried to tell you. You called me corny, though. Are you okay?
And there are many more reactions just like that one to Hamza Sheeraz's 5th round knockout of Edgar Berlanga. Many more reactions like that one from Loopy the vlogger. What is it about Edgar Berlanga that rubs so many people the wrong way?
Well, let's take a moment to try and understand
For
this.
starters, Edgar Berlanga strikes me as a guy who's stuck in a time loop or a time warp because he carries himself like a late 90s rapper in a Hype Williams music video.
What year is this?
With a sort of copy and paste personality to where you're never gonna hear anything original from this guy. He's almost the composite persona of pop culture references.
Yesterday's praise is not today's praise.
Just comes up with all these cliches. In many ways, he's a cliche himself.
It's levels to this pit.
Why are so many people rejoicing in Edgar Berlanga's violent knockout at the hands of Hamza Sheeraz, the away fighter? It's because Edgar is that unlikable. He's cringe. He makes me embarrassed to be from New York.
He's a dickbag.
He's wearing furs. He's wearing sunglasses indoors.
He's a dickbag.
He literally threw himself a parade, a ticker tape parade, after losing a lopsided decision to Canelo Alvarez. Did all that talking to land the Canelo Alvarez fight, which he never really deserved, by the way, so you could spend 36 minutes running from a 5'7" guy in his mid-30s, and you did all that talking ahead of this fight.
You gotta be ashamed of yourself.
It's not one thing with Edgar that people don't like. It's a lot of things, but the main thing is that he's a dickbag.
Douche.
He's a corny guy. I think he's corny. The whole drug dealer chic / boxer thing.
The shit is corny.
It's like he dedicated his entire boxing persona to old Jay-Z videos or something.
Grow up.
A lot of people felt that Hamza looked pretty shit in the Carlos Adames fight, the fight before last, but bear in mind that that's just one fight, whereas Edgar has looked shit more than once.
Credit to his management that they kept him unbeaten as long as they did.
And they got him to a Canelo fight, right? But I said it immediately afterwards. Now that you've had the biggest fight that you can have, you're exposed to the rest of the division.
And you don't beat none of those guys. None of them.